So what a fantastic day paragliding. Starting my day in Lewis at Mount Caburn. Ended up in London after doing my personal best to near Faversham, 74 kilometres. Yeah, we all know how it is. We start looking at the weather a couple of days beforehand. Starts looking promising. Stars are starting to build up and start making plans for a potential cross-country flight. So a day or so beforehand, start looking at potential routes, wind direction, airspaces, and start coming up with a few plans. So my initial idea was going to be to try and get away from Mount Caburn, fly across to Ringmer, avoiding the glider airfield, and then try and make my way towards Heathfield in a similar fashion as I'd done a couple of weeks previously with Carlo. Yeah, the idea then was to head north with the southerly winds and avoid the airspace at Headcorn and potentially have a goal of Rainham. So Mount Caburn that morning was particularly busy again. Nobody had been flying too much because of the poor weather, and because it was the weekend, there were quite a few people on the hill. I'd been doing some coaching with some of the low airtime guys, so and then found an opportunity to get kitted up and get ready to go. So I didn't have my camera with me, so all of the footage is from Ollie, who I was flying with that day, as well as the graphics from Sports Track Live. And what I do, I'll just chat through some of my thought pattern and where I actually ended up that day. I think this was a first for me. I managed to find pretty much the first thermal that I got into, climbed out with that one quite successfully. Got up to around about 2,000 feet in the end, actually climbed out with one of the guys that I've been coaching with, Will, so well done to him getting up so nicely. And then in the distance I could see Dan and Ollie Peters, who were doing pretty well over the far side of Ringmer, so I went on a little bit of a glide and joined up with them.
Dan?
Yeah, on a few occasions climbing out from Mount Caburn towards Ringmer, I'd lost the lift about halfway between Mount Caburn and Ringmer. So on this occasion, I thought I'd use the lift from the front edge of the cloud, so I kept snipping back into the wispy part of the cloud to keep my altitude, and it worked quite nicely. Yeah, a few sailplanes had already launched from Ringmer and were below us, so we could use them quite nicely to sort of see where the thermals were in our vicinity. Yeah, Ollie, who was filming in here, was on an Alpina 4. You can see my blue wing below him, also an Ozone Alpina 4, and Dan on his red Photon. This was only the second flight on my Alpina 4, and the first time I've kind of gone over the back and attempted any cross-country flying on it. I've actually seen Dan and Ollie on the hill at Mount Caburn. I've flown with them before, so I had a quick chat with them beforehand, before they launched, just to sort of see what their plans were. And they said that they were hoping to do a cross-country flight, so it was pretty cool to hook up with them over Ringmer and start flying together with them. Yeah, I felt really comfortable flying with both Dan and Ollie, and we worked as a team pretty well, trying to get the best out of the thermals that were on offer, as well as watching the sailplanes and what they were doing, where they were going. So we were in quite a nice area of air with some good company. Yeah, every now and again, when we were turning, I could see what appeared to be three wings ahead of us, probably about, I don't know, a kilometre, maybe 2 kilometres ahead of us, and they seemed to be doing quite well. And as it was, I found out later in the day that it was Sam, Tom and James who'd launched a little bit before us. So as well as the sailplanes and each other, we got a little bit of assistance from the birds in the sky. So trying to keep the observation as good as possible, looking out for whatever there was in the sky to assist us. So at this stage of the flight, the two guys separated, and Dan took a route more towards Heathfield, and Ollie went a bit more northerly towards Black Boys. So I made a decision to stick with Dan and his red Photon and head in the direction of Heathfield. Yeah, I found a nice thermal here. Dan got a little bit better established than myself and started climbing quite nicely. So I kind of followed him up and got up to a good altitude. Dan, I think he got up to around about 3,000 feet before gliding off towards Heathfield, and then I tried to get as high as possible, try to top out again before following him in the same direction. So getting up to a good altitude, went on glide, followed Dan, but I think because I was higher, I ended up getting ahead of him, which meant that I couldn't see where he was. So at this stage, I thought I'd head towards the far side of Heathfield, go over the TV mast in the centre of Heathfield, I think it is, towards the far side, where I'd got a really good thermal and climb with Carlo 2 weeks previously. Yeah, like I say, this is the point of the flight where the experience from the previous flight really came in handy. So I'd known previously that there was something decent that far side of Heathfield, so I got over there and actually started to climb quite nicely. And as I was 360, and I could see that that Dan was very low, and eventually I think he had to land on the southern sides of the Heathfield, and Ollie had previously landed over towards Blackboys. I guess this is where it shows that paragliding can be a little bit unfair at times, and you have to take your luck. You know, I was continuing my journey after the other guys had done pretty much all the hard work up to this stage. Dan actually sent me this video from Fly XC to sort of show where I'd caught the thermal.
XC crack as well. It's got the thermal, tells you where the thermals are, and when I landed I was looking and you were thermaling right there. Right on where that thermal hotspot was, and I was like, oh, should have done that, because when I didn't even mean to, but when we were here, I looked at my phone and we were smack bang over that. So I should have just looked on the phone and gone straight for that, because it did work, because that's where you thermaled. I was sitting down here watching you thermal up here, so yeah.
Yeah, so what I've done since the flight is actually plotted these thermal trigger sites on my Fly Sky High, so I've actually got them as waypoints on there, so they could assist me in the future. Yeah, so after this decent climb out after Heathfield, got some good altitude, and then went on a bit of a glide. And this was probably the most stressful part of the flight, because I got to my lowest point just after here. Yeah, like on most occasions, get to about 1,500 feet or so and heading down, and I'm busily looking for thermals, and then kind of below that looking for somewhere to land. So I was using my observation as best I could, and thankfully found or saw a couple of birds above a wooded area. So didn't have any option really but to go to where they were, and eventually they found some lift for me and got away in a really decent thermal. Yeah, this was I think the lowest point of the flight, as in altitude, so around about 500 feet, maybe just below that, and definitely looking for landing areas there. So it was fantastic to get up and away again. And at this point I was approaching where I got to with Carlo 2 weeks previously, and I could sort of see Ticehurst and Buellwater to the north, so I was quite hopeful I was going to beat where I got to previously. Actually went from my lowest altitude on the flight to my highest at this point, so the climb took me up to 3,300 feet, and I was still going up, and I'd actually just gone into the 3,500 airspace ceiling there, so clearly needed to do something about that. So I turned towards the south to get out of the airspace back into the 5,500 ceiling, into a bit of a blue area there, and that done the trick. I kind of stayed level for quite some time and pushed away from the danger area of the airspace. Yeah, I think I went through quite a mixture of emotions during the flight. Obviously the loneliness of being up in the sky by myself, nobody flying with us for the last sort of 50 kilometres or so. And also really the excitement of it, that you're up there doing something that not many people have the opportunity to do. And you know, I must say it's a massive privilege. But the other thing that I noticed quite a lot of was the amount of general aviation, the small aircraft that are up there as well. So at this point I was approaching my previous personal best cross-country flight, which was 62 kilometres, which I'd done last year from Worcester to Abergavenny. So really pleased I was getting past that. So because of escaping out of the 3,500 airspace, it kind of took me south and around the southern side of the Headcorn airspace, which kind of put me off course a little bit from where I planned my route the day before. So looking back on my flight now, I could possibly have headed towards Canterbury and then potentially Margate in the distance, but I decided to head northeast towards Rainham and had the Isle of Sheppey right in front of me. Just a couple of quick thank yous on here. First one, Demetrios, for taking over the coaching on Saturday to allow me to get off on my cross-country flight. Next one, Pete Impey, great talk a couple of weeks ago at our monthly meeting and good inspiration for this flight. So nice safe landing about 5 or 6 kilometres short of Faversham, and met by a lovely guy called Paul who dropped us at the railway station. Oh, I just done my new PB, so 74 kilometres from Mount Caburn to near to Faversham. So about 2 hours or so to get back to Mount Caburn, train from Faversham into London, Victoria, and then back down to Lewis. But it gave me a chance to input my flights on XC League and make the most of being number 8 in the country for a very short period of time.